Parliaments have to look like the people they're meant to represent. That's why it's so important that we have women in Parliament, and in particular that we have more women in Parliament. I don't believe that happens by accident, and we've seen what happens, and we don't get equal representation unless we work at it, and we take actions like, for example, all women shortlist and positive action. It's so important. Women represent half of the country, so not to be represented in that number, to have 50-50 representation for women in Parliament, means that our voices aren't being heard. That means you get legislation that doesn't take account of us. And it's no surprise, although it is disappointing, obviously, that women continue to face discrimination in the workplace. We continue to be paid less than men. We continue to have worse health outcomes, that our healthcare needs are not always appropriately addressed. And that doesn't happen just because people have not thought about it. It happens because women haven't been in the room making the case for it, and it's so important that women are in the room. It's also really important that we represent all different communities in Parliament. That's one of the reasons why I think it's important to have more disabled people in Parliament, more LGBT plus people in Parliament, more black, minority ethnic people in Parliament, because if we don't do that, then we don't have a Parliament that looks like the people it's there to represent.
Any democratic body, or actually any workplace, every aspect of life, there are women, and we need to make sure that we are represented at every level, especially in places where there are policies and decisions being made. Women add so much value to that conversation. And it's not just on women's issues. Actually, as a black woman, I am equally interested in housing policy as I am on equalities issues. So it's very important to mainstream our voices. But actually, the reality is that it makes better policy. And we are just above half of the population. If you look at health, for instance, a lot of health policy in the past has not actually catered, I would say, for women. But now that we do have more women representatives in health in particular, women's health is now so much more at the top of the agenda. And of course, the Scottish Government has talked about and is enacting policies around menopause, which you never would have been thinking that they would have been talked about in a parliamentary business, for instance.
Equal representation is so important in politics. It's important in every area in life, but just about every single decision made affects people's lives, whether it's local decisions or whether it's national decisions. And we know from looking at issues like austerity or violence against women and girls, the decisions that are made really impact women's lives right across our communities. So we really need to make sure that we've got lived experience voices making those decisions so that they better represent our country. We've got a long way to go in terms of equal representation, particularly in local government. Only about a third of councillors are women, and there's even less than that in senior positions like finance and council leaders. So we really need to make sure that we get better representation and make sure that women are more involved across different policy areas as well.
We're lucky in Scotland, not lucky, but through our hard work, we've got 45% women MSPs, and it makes a massive difference. For us to be truly representative of the populations we serve, we need to have the right diversity in Parliament, and we're moving in the right direction. It changes the whole culture, having a diverse Parliament, and we need to work towards at least 50% representation.
The system, every institution that we interact with is traditionally designed by men, led by men, organized by men, and they don't necessarily work for women. So having more women in the room means that we can start making institutions work for us. And that means working for everybody, universal design. And it isn't just more women. We need more disabled women, more women of color, more women with a different variety of backgrounds. So I'm very much hoping that we can do this. In my experience, working as an engineer, I was an engineer before I was elected to Parliament, working in places with very few women, often I was the only woman. You only get a change to the culture of a place once you get to about 40% women. Having one or two women in the room isn't enough to change the culture, to change how things work. Once you get to 40%, then something shifts and you get a much more collaborative sort of culture. You get an acceptance of different points of view that wasn't there before.